Imagine this. You worked hard all year. You got a 3% raise, maybe even 4% if your boss was feeling generous. You're feeling pretty good about yourself, right? You check your bank account, you're saving money, you're doing everything you're supposed to do. But here's the thing nobody told you. While you were busy celebrating that raise, something was quietly eating away at your money. Not the IRS, not your landlord, not even your subscription to that streaming service you forgot you had. I'm talking about a tax that doesn't show up on any pay stub. There's no line item for it. No politician is going to campaign on it. And yet, over the last 3 years alone, this invisible tax has stolen the equivalent of roughly $34,000 from the average American household. And the worst part? Most people have no idea it's even happening. My name is Apex, and I spend way too much time thinking about the hidden forces that silently destroy people's wealth. If you're someone who feels like you're doing everything right, you're working hard, you're saving money, but somehow you're not getting ahead, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because today, we're going to talk about inflation. And I know, you've heard this word 1,000 times. But here's what most people don't realize. The way you think about inflation is probably completely wrong, and that misunderstanding is costing you real money, like life-changing amounts of money. So let's fix that. Okay, let's start with a question. If you put $10,000 in a savings account and just left it there for 10 years, how much money would you have at the end? Most people would say, well, $10,000, maybe a little more with interest. And technically, yeah. The number in your account might say $10,000, but here's the thing, that $10,000 doesn't buy what it used to. Let me give you a concrete example. In 2020, the average price of a used car in America was about $22,000. By 2023, that same average used car cost over $31,000. That's a 41% increase in just 3 years. So if you had $22,000 saved up in 2020 thinking, great, I can buy a decent used car whenever I need one, and you just let that money sit there. By 2023, you couldn't afford that same car anymore. Your money didn't go anywhere. It just shrank. This is what I mean by the invisible tax. Inflation doesn't take money out of your account. It just makes the money in your account worth less. And here's the frustrating part. The official inflation rate, the number the government reports, that's based on something called the Consumer Price Index. And according to that, we've seen cumulative inflation of about 22% since 2020. But look, if you've actually been buying groceries, paying rent, or filling up your gas tank, you know that number feels generous. The things that actually matter to regular people, housing, food, healthcare, education, those have been inflating way faster than the official numbers suggest. All right. Let's do some real math here. And I apologize in advance because this might ruin your day. Let's say you're an average American household. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median household income in 2020 was about $67,500. Now let's say you were responsible. You saved 10% of your income every year, so about $6,750 annually. You put it in a regular savings account earning, let's be generous, 0.5% interest. This was pretty typical before rates went up. Over 3 years, you'd have saved around $20,400. But here's where inflation enters the picture. With roughly 22% cumulative inflation over that period, your $20,400 in purchasing power is really only worth about $16,700 in 2020 dollars. You saved $20,400. You can only buy $16,700 worth of stuff. The invisible tax just took $3,700 from you, and you didn't even notice. Now multiply that across your entire net worth, your checking account, your savings. That money market fund your parents told you was safe. All of it is being slowly devoured. This is where it gets really interesting, because most people think, okay, well, I'll just earn more money to keep up. But wages don't keep up with inflation. They never have. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, real wages, that's wages adjusted for inflation, have been essentially flat for decades for most American workers. So you're running on a treadmill that's slowly speeding up, and you're wondering why you're out of breath. Now you might be thinking, okay, Nick, this is depressing, but what am I supposed to do about it? I can't control inflation. And you're right, you can't control inflation. But here's what you can control: how you respond to it. And this is where psychology comes in. Because the invisible tax doesn't just steal your money, it messes with your head. See, there's this thing called money illusion. It's a term coined by economist Irving Fisher back in the 1920s, and it describes our tendency to think about money in nominal terms, the actual number, rather than real terms, what that number can actually buy. So when your boss gives you a 3% raise and inflation is running at 4%, you feel like you got a raise. Your brain sees a bigger number on your paycheck and releases a little hit of dopamine, but in reality, you just took a 1% pay cut. And because of money illusion, most people never advocate for themselves properly. They don't negotiate harder. They don't demand raises that actually keep pace with inflation. They just accept the nominal increase and wonder why they feel broke. Here's another psychological trap: the safe money illusion. We've been taught our whole lives that keeping money in the bank is responsible. It's safe. It's what smart people do. And look, having an emergency fund is important. I'm not saying go gamble your rent money on cryptocurrency, but there's a difference between an emergency fund and a wealth-building strategy. And too many people confuse the two. I've talked to people who have $50,000, $100,000, sometimes more, just sitting in savings accounts earning basically nothing. And they feel proud of that. They feel secure. But that security is an illusion. Every single day, inflation is taking a tiny bite out of that money. It's like having a small hole in your boat. You're not sinking fast, but you're definitely sinking. Okay, here's where I'm going to say something that might sound a little controversial, but I think it's important. Inflation isn't just a natural economic phenomenon. It's a wealth transfer mechanism. Let me explain. When the Federal Reserve creates new money, which they've done a lot of in recent years, that new money doesn't distribute evenly throughout the economy. The people who get access to that new money first, banks, large corporations, wealthy investors, they get to spend it before prices adjust. By the time that money trickles down to regular people in the form of wages, prices have already gone up. So the purchasing power has already been diluted. This is called the Cantillon effect, named after 18th century economist Richard Cantillon. And it basically means that inflation systematically transfers wealth from people who hold cash, typically middle and lower income households, to people who hold assets, typically the wealthy. Think about it. When inflation hits, what happens? The price of your groceries goes up. The price of your rent goes up. But you know what else goes up? The value of real estate, the value of stocks, the value of businesses. If you own those things, inflation actually makes you richer. If you don't, it makes you poorer. This is why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. It's not just about income inequality. It's about asset inequality. And inflation accelerates that gap. All right, I've spent the last several minutes basically telling you that an invisible force is stealing your money and there's a systemic wealth transfer happening that benefits the rich. Not exactly uplifting stuff, but here's the thing: knowledge is power. And now that you understand how this works, you can actually do something about it. Step 1. Stop thinking in nominal terms. Every time you look at your money, I want you to ask yourself, what can this actually buy? Not what number is in my account. If you got a 3% raise last year and inflation was 4%, you didn't get a raise. You got a pay cut. Internalize that. Let it motivate you to negotiate harder, to develop new skills, to find new income streams. Step 2. Minimize your cash drag. I'm not saying don't have an emergency fund. You should absolutely have 3 to 6 months of expenses in liquid savings. But anything beyond that? It's getting eaten alive by inflation. Look at high-yield savings accounts. They're paying 4 to 5% right now, which at least keeps pace with current inflation. Treasury I-bonds are literally designed to track inflation. These aren't exciting investments, but they stop the bleeding. Step 3. Understand that safe and risk-free are not the same thing. Keeping all your money in cash feels safe, but it's not risk-free. You're guaranteed to lose purchasing power over time. That's not safety. That's a slow, comfortable decline.
Real safety comes from having a diversified portfolio that includes assets that tend to appreciate with inflation. Real estate, stocks, commodities. These feel riskier because their values fluctuate, but over long periods, they've historically outpaced inflation significantly. Step 4, think like the wealthy. Here's what most people don't realize about rich people. They don't hoard cash. They hoard assets. They borrow money at low interest rates to buy things that appreciate in value. Then inflation comes along and does two things. It inflates the value of their assets and it shrinks the real value of their debt. Now, I'm not saying go take out a bunch of loans, but understanding this principle can shift how you think about money. Maybe that means buying a house instead of renting forever. Maybe it means investing in index funds instead of letting money rot in savings. Maybe it means starting a business. The point is, stop playing defense. The invisible tax punishes people who play defense. Step 5, invest in yourself. Here's something inflation can never take from you: your skills, your knowledge, your ability to create value. The best hedge against inflation isn't gold or Bitcoin or real estate, it's your earning potential. If you can consistently increase your income faster than inflation, you win. Period. Take courses, learn new skills, build a side business, create multiple income streams. These things aren't just nice to have, they're essential survival tools in an inflationary environment. Look, I want to zoom out for a second here. I've given you a lot of tactical advice, and that stuff matters, but I think there's a bigger mindset shift that needs to happen. For decades, we've been told that the path to financial security is simple. Get a job, work hard, save money, retire comfortably. And maybe that worked for our grandparents. But the game has changed. Inflation used to average around 2 to 3% per year. That was manageable. You could save your way to wealth over a long career. But we've just lived through a period where we saw that number spike dramatically. And while it's come down, there's no guarantee it stays low. The government has taken on massive amounts of debt. There's political pressure to keep spending. The tools used to fight inflation have limits. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying it because I want you to wake up. The old rules don't work anymore. You cannot save your way to wealth in an inflationary environment. You have to invest your way there. You have to earn your way there. You have to be proactive, not passive. The invisible tax is real. It's not going away. And the only question is, are you going to let it slowly drain your wealth? Or are you going to structure your financial life in a way that puts you on the right side of this equation? Here's what I want you to take away from this video. Every dollar you own is in a race against time. Inflation is the invisible tax that never stops, never sleeps, and never sends you a bill. It just quietly, relentlessly shrinks the value of your money. You can ignore this reality. Most people do. They keep their money in savings accounts earning nothing. They accept raises that don't keep pace with prices, and they wonder why they feel like they're falling behind despite doing everything right. Or you can accept this reality and act accordingly. You can invest in assets. You can invest in yourself. You can think long-term about where your money is and what it's doing for you. The wealthy understand this. It's one of their biggest advantages. And now you understand it too. So the question is, what are you going to do about it? If this video opened your eyes to something you hadn't fully considered before, hit that subscribe button. I make videos like this every week, breaking down the hidden forces that affect your money and what you can actually do about them. And drop a comment below. I want to know, what's one thing you're going to change about how you manage your money after watching this? I'll see you in the next one.